The gods of Olympus have abandoned me. Now there is no hope.
And Kratos cast himself from the highest mountain in all of Greece. After 10 years of suffering, 10 years of endless nightmares, it would finally come to an end. Death would be his escape from madness. But it had not always been this way.
God of War takes inspiration from both Devil May Cry and Onimusha, like a lot of third-person action games these days do, but it does more than that. It combines the best aspects of those titles into a surprisingly unique sword and sorcery motif. The point of the game is that you kill lots and lots of things, and you do it in a way that's extremely fun. Typically when we have a fantasy game, we get the Tolkien-esque Dungeons & Dragons themed, goblins and orcs, but the way Sony Santa Monica spun ancient Greek mythology into this dark and twisted universe creates a game that's both familiar and unique. Similarly, the gameplay is also familiar and unique. It uses a combination system that a lot of people will be able to come to grips with fairly quickly, since it's simply a couple of buttons and a few modifiers, but it's also deep enough and dynamic enough that a lot of people will need, several days of good playtime to truly master it and expand their technique. To elaborate a little more on the combat, try thinking of God of War as a sort of Tony Hawk of the action genre. I know Prince of Persia Warrior Within was billed as the same thing, and we might have even helped do that, but I believe that game turned out somewhat differently. Anyway, God of War lets you chain together attacks instantaneously, break combinations without having to worry about animation routines continually looping and ruining your experience, and you can even segue right into blocks and dodges literally on the fly. So that means I could start attacking a foe, like let's say I do a medium strong hit combination and I want to chain that into a modified strong hit combination. But then one of the foe's buddies tries to hit me, bam, I slam on the block button, my animation stops, my character's blocking, that's it, no fuss, no muss, total responsiveness. Now, by combining the combat system that's pretty in-depth and cool with these unique and monstrous characters that we already are familiar with, like centaurs and minotaurs and harpies, Sony Santa Monica managed to create a very cohesive, exciting experience. Thankfully, the pacing of the title never lets up, so from beginning to end, you're always engaged in the action. Part of this is because the technology behind God of War is pretty fantastic. Like a game like Jak 3, it doesn't really ever load. Sometimes it'll stutter and it'll load for about half a second to a second, but other than that, it's one seamless experience front to back. This is something a lot of people tend to take for granted when they're playing games, the loading times and how much they can really hurt the experience. But I'm super glad they're not here in God of War, because that makes transitioning from one dank and blood-soaked dungeon to an extremely elaborate vista or a view of a mountainous Ares trampling an army in the background just incredible. So we have this seamless generation of a fantastic world, this character who is capable of fighting in a variety of different ways very, very quickly, and we have a universe that we can relate to but also appreciate as being original. How do you make that even better? Technically, you make graphics that are just astounding. Orally, you have music that's some of the best out there. The orchestral stuff is great, it's very fitting. It could even be applied to a AAA film. You take sound effects that are just superb, and then you fill it with voice acting that's very, very well done. Even though Kratos himself is sometimes a little overblown with his Ares and all of his other gruff. So what then is really wrong with God of War? If there is anything wrong with it? Some users are going to find that the game on its standard difficulty setting is a bit too easy. And in fact, the only times it gets hard are when a lot of kind of superficial platforming challenges are thrown in, and these are somewhat underdeveloped, seem like quick additions to expand the scope of the game. Other people will find that there really aren't as many boss encounters as there could have been, especially since the boss encounters that are there are just amazing. We would have liked to see a few more. Now, we'd want more simply because the ones that are there are really cool. They each involve, classic pattern-based gameplay. They focus on the strengths of the combat system, and they even highlight the game's minigame emphasis. And finally, there are some very minor presentational issues. For instance, sometimes the developers like to beat you over the head with these text prompts, that say something like, Kratos has found handle. Handle goes into place that holds handle. Kratos should put handle into place and pull the f***ing handle. It's a little unnecessary. If they were going to kick us in the balls with stuff like that, it would have been nice if they cushioned the blow and, at least had a visual cue, so when Kratos was going to pick up the handle and you just heard and saw Kratos do something like, ooh, here's a handle, I can use it. Instead, we get the big drawn-out text prompt, and that's a pretty cheesy thing. If you can get past those minor presentational issues and don't have a problem with setting God of War on hard, you're going to find an experience that's really going to appeal to a lot of people, assuming they're over the age of 18. What I think is particularly cool about the game is that when you do play on hard and the eventual God mode that you can unlock, you receive extra bonuses, incentives for completing the game a second time. These are outlined in the instruction manual, which I also think is really considerate because a lot of other developers don't really do that. And these incentives and bonuses include actual extra content, extra levels, new character designs, chunks of the story that you're not made privy to throughout the single-player game. And this gives the player a real reason to go through a second time on the harder difficulty settings and enjoy the game again. For the reason that we can't accurately explain how good this game is in such a short window, you should be buying this game. That sounds a little funny, but it's true. God of War offers a lot, and it's just not fair to slam it all into 5 minutes of quick time. So do yourself a favor, do us a favor, do Gaming General a favor. Go out there, buy it, be happy, put it on God mode if you want a little more difficulty, and just enjoy what great art design, great storytelling, and fantastic gameplay can make.